The first few seconds of this talk, Matthew is going to share an image that goes to the heart of our theme today. I'll give you a few seconds to look at it. And for those who may have trouble seeing it, it's a single daisy flower with only 4 thready leaves, growing up through a crack in a concrete sidewalk. When I first looked at it, though not right away, I realized that it shows grace in action in such a simple, subtle way. Imagine how many times this flower misses being destroyed, never to be seen, never to reach the purpose of its existence. How many inattentive people, not fully conscious of their surroundings, lost in thought, fighting fear, oblivious to nature, distracted by their cell phones, dreading the demands of work, walked by this spot over the days in which this flower is growing. How many of them are superstitious and see only the crack not to step on, but are blind to the flower? Some will see these events or non-events as merely random, and of course they are. But randomness and grace do not exclude each other. Consider the most random event of all, the existence of the universe. Consider the randomness of our galaxy and the spiral wing of it in which our random sun forms. Consider the random gigatons of space junk, gas, metals, rock, and ice that orbit the sun for billions of years. Consider the megatons of it that coalesce to create a planet in just the right place to sustain life. Consider life and the randomness of its emergence from non-life. Once life is in the picture, randomness is vastly reduced because life itself is not random. Rather, it is driven by its very nature to reach in every possible direction. The obstacles it encounters may be random, but life exists with the inchoate intention to survive and expand. Within this intention, random changes to the form of life help drive it to detour, surround, transform, ingest, or even digest many of its obstacles. Life is voracious, and at some point, life introduces the universe to awareness. Once awareness is in the picture, randomness is again vastly reduced, which happens further when life drives awareness to look at itself. When life aware becomes life intelligent enough to recognize self from other, as not just we can, but also great apes, the elephant, probably the dolphin, and based on some evidence, the octopus, randomness meets its match. Looking at this, the process which some call the grand story of the universe, it is possible to maintain that all of it is chance. I wonder, though, when we bring our view in closer and closer and closer towards the personal, our community life and intimate lives, whether that is how we experience it. I doubt many of us live in constant awareness of randomness. Instead, we probably find thousands of reasons to be glad, to feel comforted and held. When we do, whether we use the word or not, we open ourselves to a state of grace, in which we recognize how much of our lives is simply given to us. Even when we have worked, fought, and struggled long, so many of the results come to us despite ourselves. And all of this is one form of grace. We see it in the simple fact that a daisy has survived to be 6 inches tall in a crack of concrete. Let's call this random grace. And I'm not quite done with the daisy yet. I talked about how many disasters don't happen that would destroy this lovely living thing. there also must be many people who do see it and offer it a moment of mercy, which they probably never think of again. Many passers-by alter their step a couple of inches, barely thinking about it, but showing in that moment their engagement with and respect for life. This is grace, though in a different form, for we don't just experience grace, we offer it as well. Even in some of our tiniest acts, we show that our life is united with the life of others, whether a flower, a human being, or all of life itself. A simple act of courtesy tells someone, I, for one, am not abandoning you to obscurity or invisibility. I see you and will offer you this moment of connection. If you move to different places, you may well see how the frequency of these tiny moments of connection vary widely. And I can tell you from experience that Toronto is nowhere near as cold-hearted as some people say it is. Small moments of connection are frequently offered to each other here. We may take those for granted. And let's call this simple, almost reflexive reaching out, casual grace. And there's another form of grace that we can find in this simple picture of the daisy. Imagine the possibility that one lonely, burdened, even perhaps abandoned person in the depth of despair happens to see this daisy growing and surviving where it is, and identifies with the flower and experiences reassurance. Or imagine this daisy representing the grander scale in which someone in emotional peril suddenly perceives beauty or meaning within a bleak, anonymous, uncaring view of the world. Imagine the injection of hope or endurance that such a moment might offer. This is saving grace. Though we may not know it, we also walk around our world with the capacity to offer saving grace. Think of this as the flip side of the unwitting brutality which people can thoughtlessly show to each other. If a sharp comment, a sideways smile, or a minuscule flash of contempt can hurt someone, ending the possibility of meaningful connection, then the opposite effect must also be possible. Some people who relate near-death experiences talk of becoming aware that it's the small actions of life that have the most impact in the end. I think back to my young adulthood when I was a Baha'i, when I'm most doubting my acceptability as a man and my relationship with my father. It's the acceptance and even affection of heterosexual Baha'i men that lay stronger foundations of self-esteem and eventually enable me to become more affectionate with my father. None of these men know what they're doing or their effect on me. They're simply living with love. Such is the power of community and each one of us in our capacity to offer saving grace. Now, the biggest difficulty some of us have with this word grace is the way in which some people use it within their theology. In some belief systems, grace is an act or blessing of God, sometimes in the form of the idea of the Holy Spirit. Further, among those who use the word this way, there are some who feel that the experience of God's act of grace is the only way to be assured of God's love and salvation, sometimes literally in the next worlds. This kind of grace might flow through partaking in sacraments, or having a born-again experience, or in saying the Shahada, the Muslim statement of creed, or through repeated offerings to the large and small gods of Hinduism, among many other religious observances. Let us not fixate on these very specific ideas about grace. But remember that even theological grace need not exclude us, whatever our theologies. For instance, an idea that I first encountered, again, back as a Baha'i, but it's also a teaching in Islam and perhaps elsewhere, is that divine grace is so necessary that were it to stop for a moment, all of creation would cease to exist. In this view, grace is universal and unselective. Grace flows not just to every human being, but to every molecule. In a religious humanist sense, we could see this grace as acting through the laws of physics. And given that they give quarks flavors like strange and charm, I've always hoped that if they ever discover a grand unifying theory or theory of everything, that they just call it love or call it grace. That could be grandly unifying. A rational humanist might want to use the word grace because it is associated with wonder, awe, and gratitude. These feelings are not available only to the religious. In fact, they're essential attitudes to hold up as characteristic of religious humanism and are part of what people mean who see themselves as spiritual, but not religious. We could stand in wonder at what could be called this universal grace. Even so, some of us have mystical experiences of grace that don't come with religious labels on them or do not draw us into traditional theology. And these are far more common than many of us think. As in the reading, this grace strikes like a wave of light breaking into our darkness. It conveys that you are accepted. You do not need to do anything now. Perhaps later. I love that part. Perhaps later. In my direct experiences of grace, I have a rare sense that I really do not have to do anything, and that this is not happening because of what I have done, am doing, or will do, or about what I've earned or will promise. Tillich's words describe it exactly. My sense of self is altered forever. And this is transcendent grace, which comes from what feels like above. This in itself is life-changing. Everyday moments become more meaningful. People we love become even more precious, and people we don't know become companions in the world, if only for the moment that we share a square of cracked concrete. Out of that transcendent grace comes my conviction that I want to do something in response. And that's why I'm here today. I was a frustrated shrink feeling lonely in Toronto. I had no desire to do this. Transcendent grace requires nothing of us, but within us we may yearn to respond. And this yearning itself, which we may not even be aware of, might be what splits the concrete within our beings, opening a crack for transcendence to enter. And from that, we might open ourselves to transformative grace, that which will guide us whenever we remember to turn back to it. It may sound as though transformative must be better than transcendent, but I don't mean that. Simply, I think one usually precedes the other. I also believe we have to become partners with grace in order to transform, and that there's an active, ongoing interaction between willingness and grace. Sometimes we lose sight of even powerful transforming grace, but it's always there to reconnect with, although sometimes not easily. Sometimes we are less willing than other times. But remember, we don't have to do anything. There will be another time when we will want to. Meanwhile, we always have the grace of others to help, to comfort, to guide, and even to pull us on. And we have our own grace to offer. Random grace, casual grace, saving grace, universal grace, transcendent grace, transformative grace. All are here around us and among us. And this is why we live constantly in grace. It is wondrous. It is awesome. It is a gift.